Hey everyone, it's Cheri, your dysgraphia consultant. I am so excited to be here today with Heather Hodgins-Chan of Ottawa, Canada. Heather, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Cheri.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an occupational therapist. I work in the area of pediatrics. I co-own a clinic in Canada, Ontario, Canada, which is a subdivision of Ottawa, Ontario. And I just have a passion for working with children with disabilities, challenges that prevent them from being independent in their daily life.
Wow, cool. So tell us a little bit more about that practice that you're talking about.
So a few years ago, I met a physical therapist at a course, and we both found out quickly that we shared a passion for working with the same type of children. We were at a course learning about primitive reflex integration, and we started chatting and realized, wow, why couldn't we just put together a team? And so
Wow, reflex integration. That sounds exciting. I love the reflex integration.
Great, yes, yes. It's one piece to the puzzle in helping children with these difficulties.
Yes, and it's a very complicated piece that people don't understand and don't know enough about.
Yes.
So what is your caseload like? Do you have a caseload? You know, working in a private practice is a little different than working in a school-based setting. What does your practice look like?
Well, I see approximately 5 to 6 children a day.
Okay.
Myself, that is my passion. I love treating children, and the administrative side is just another piece to it. I also love coaching and leading our team of occupational therapists. Right now we have 6 other occupational therapists who work at the clinic, so that's so fun to just go over cases together and review and learn together.
So what does coaching mean to you? This wasn't a question we were going to ask, I had talked about, but that is one of those areas that I am very intrigued about, is using the word coaching and occupational therapy together. What does that mean to you?
So I coach children and families every day, right? I help them organize activities and exercises that are going to help them become independent in their daily activities. And so coaching for me is encouragement. It's encouraging families to live their best life. And I also use that same motto whenever I mentor other therapists at the clinic. I've been to several different courses in the United States, and I have brought back that information here to Canada because we don't have such a huge population of occupational therapists. And so I've traveled quite extensively to learn different techniques and tools to bring back here.
So when you're thinking of coaching, you're thinking sharing the information that you have with others. Do you ever get into the idea of coaching where you're really looking at what is the potential beyond today?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel in this profession, Cheri, and maybe you feel this way as well, is that we're always learning. There's always something to learn. My parents have often asked me, Heather, you've been doing this for 21 years and you're still going to courses. What more is there to learn? And it's so fun because the learning is endless.
Yeah. My husband says the same thing.
I'm still going to approximately 2 to 3 courses a year.
I am constantly in books. Right now, I've been doing a lot of studying in primitive reflexes, and it's been quite an adventure. But I also am doing a lot of research in coaching and leadership and what that looks like and how that impacts occupational therapy. So we are great minds. We're thinking alike. So that's pretty cool. So getting back to some of the questions that we originally talked about, you talked about that you have 6 kiddos a day and you're working with them, and then you also have the administrative thing. What does it look like as far as their diagnosis goes?
I see a lot of different children who have various diagnoses. Most of the children that I see come to me with some sort of sensory processing difficulty. Many of them have autism, anxiety, developmental coordination disorder, or other sorts of sensory issues that are impacting their learning.
Yeah, that developmental coordination disorder, I hear a lot about it, and I don't believe it's a diagnosis that we can honor here in the States. And I wish we could, because I really think it fills in a gap that fits a lot of these kids.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So what is your favorite DIY tool?
Mm. I'd have to say that there are a lot of different things that you can use at home in order to help children with handwriting difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
I love tongs. Tongs are a great way to work on the intrinsic muscle strength of the hands. Those are
Are
the
you,
precursor.
so the ones that you get at home, so are you talking the ones that clamp? Are you talking the ones that have a spring in them to keep kind of, or are you talking about the ones that have like a handle and it's like scissors that open and close? Which one do you like the best?
I like the ones that have the little spring that opens up because it's a
Because then
little
it
bit of like,
causes that resistance to have that's go. Um, do you find that you can find any of those that are kid size in Canada?
it's very difficult. However, I have found a few at the local dollar stores that we've had.
Ah, I'll have to check that out, because I always find trouble finding kid-sized tongs.
Yes.
The and I'm concerned about using adult-sized tongs sometimes when I'm really trying to work on that pincer grasp, because it forces you to have that whole hand grasp, and it's the kind of the same principle of using small pencils when you're writing. If it's too big, it's too top heavy, you go to a much more primitive grasp.
Yes.
So finding kid-sized tongues is not that easy unless you go to one of those therapy treatment centers or sites.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so
And
thank
also,
you.
I love using what I've kind of called a paper scrunching technique. The
A
children
who?
kind of laugh and they ask me, "What is scrunching, Heather?"
So what is, yes, what are you talking about?
So you just take a plain piece of paper. You have the child put their hand up so that it's rested on the table. And if you can imagine putting a sheet of paper in their hand and having them move and scrunch up that paper. If you look,
So you're like that, and then this.
that's exactly. So look at what's happening in my hand. We're looking at all of the movements, fine movements that help with the development of the arches of the hand. And that's
Great in hand manipulation task. Great in hand
and
manipulation
something
task.
that's so easy, right?
Yeah. I I did a video when I was first getting started in creating videos of using dice, doing that same idea of manipulating the dice in your hand.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about some of the specializations that you have. You would keep talking about coming to the States and learning, and that you are continually learning, mom and dad saying, when are you going to stop? But what is it that you specialize in? What makes you unique in Canada compared to some of the other OT clinics that might be around you?
Well, we actually don't have a lot of occupational therapy clinics in Canada. It's very rare to find an OT clinic.
Wow. So you get a lot of business just because you're there.
Yes, we do have a few in the city here. However, it's not mainstream like it is in the United States.
Okay.
In fact, one of my biggest challenges here is having occupational therapy covered by private insurance. It's something that
Wow. Okay.
it's something that is not mainstream. More and more insurance companies are starting to cover occupational therapy.
Okay.
Most of the occupational therapists in Canada either work in a hospital or a school, or they might work with people who have had motor vehicle accidents or
Okay.
workplace injury. So
Okay.
what we're doing here is fairly new and unique to Canada.
Wow. So you have taken courses on reflex integration. You've What about sensory integration? They kind of go together. So where are you with sensory integration? Do you do a lot of that in your clinic?
Yes, that is a huge part of our clinic. I wouldn't say that we use a fully sensory integration approach. However, we use some of those principles in our daily activities and treatment of children. In fact, I went to Boston, outside of Boston, Massachusetts, a few years ago and trained with Dr. Teresa May Benson. And
Wow.
I spent a week learning from her the main principles of sensory integration and how to incorporate that to help children with sensory processing difficulties. So
Cool.
most of the occupational therapists in Canada that have these private clinics have done some sort of sensory integration. However, like I was saying, it's not something as common as what you would see in the United States.
Interesting. I was interviewing somebody else that lives out in California, and she was saying that sensory clinics are all over the place, like almost like on the corner of the next block. Where as you move east, they're a little bit more few and far between. So it's very interesting that it's taking almost like a Z approach where it's going from the west, coming east, and then it's headed north. So it's kind of like doing a Z backwards kind of a thing. Is that Z the right way to say it? But this whole kind of coming across the west to east and then headed north, it'll infiltrate down the road. It'll be much more integrated into your system.
Yes.
In the schools, do they do a lot of SI related activities?
No, the occupational therapists who work in the school here are consultant occupational therapists.
So they're not even really doing direct treatment?
Not very much of it. They don't. We just don't have the resources to have OTs in the schools. The wait list to get into school OT.
When you say resources, are you talking financial resources or human resources?
Financial resources.
Financial resources. Okay. So you don't have any laws like we do, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. You don't have anything like that in Canada that's supporting that funding then?
Pardon me? This is...
So the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act is the law that supports special education in the United States, and it provides the funding for the school-based therapist. So I'm guessing that you don't have that kind of resource.
We do have some of those resources available. However, it's very limited, and often the children with severe disabilities are the ones that are getting the help. And the wait list for occupational therapy in the school is approximately 1 to 1.5 years in duration.
Oh my gosh. The states are 60 days. If you don't get an evaluation, they go to the next level of intervention to get that evaluation done. So
wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so that's part of that law.
I used to work in the school system, and while I enjoyed it and interacting with the teachers because I was right there with them, the teachers and the EAs, I didn't have enough visits to actually make a huge difference in what I wanted to do with those children.
Oh,
it was
that's
more
a
of a
shame.
consultative role. I would see them perhaps once a month and give them a few ideas and suggestions and tools, and then they were on their way. So I really feel as though these children need more therapy in order to see a difference.
Yeah, it sounds like they do. Sounds like you need to have some kind of occupational therapy wave that goes across Canada.
Yes. So one of my mentors and colleagues, Kimberly Barthel, she is an occupational therapist and neurobiologist who travels internationally. And she really was one of the first people who brought sensory integration ideas back to Canada. She's from British Columbia. And she actually worked with Jean Ayres at her clinic in California.
Oh, does that ever give me chills, working with Jean Ayres? Oh, amazing. What an amazing woman that was.
She really was. She was wise beyond her time and really understood how the brain and the body are connected.
Yes. Matter of fact, I have her book, and I was on Amazon a year or so ago. They have a new edition of it out for 25 years since the first edition came out. And the old edition was worth $200 on Amazon right now. So So just to let you out there that may hear this, that that groundbreaking change in occupational therapy profession has done a lot of crazy, amazing things for children around the world. We just need to get it moving a little bit more in Canada, it looks like.
Yes. The
So,
facility where I went to study in Boston was
mhm.
the Janekumar Center. And Jane Kumar also worked and studied under Jean Ayres. And that
Wow.
clinic that is currently open um, is specifically for children with sensory processing difficulties. It's an incredible place. In fact, I brought back the idea of a sensory gym from my experience there.
Isn't a sensory gym absolutely amazing? So do you have one in your clinic?
We do. We have a custom-made sensory integration gym that is made of steel. And so it allows us to hang various swings and devices that we use for sensory integration therapy.
Do you have one that you can, that has lights in it and that you can dim and you can change the intensity and the frequency of the lighting? Or do you just have one that's adapting swings?
We have a separate sensory room, and
Okay.
that has lights that are very calming for children. And that is a smaller room with various lights and tactile tools in order to help them regulate.
That's more of a quiet room, that quiet, calming room where you
It is.
have the swings that can be the stimulating sensory room.
Yes. It's
That
always
now that is gold because I don't know how many clinics have one or the other, but they don't really have both.
we're really enjoying our new space. We
Sounds like
are
it.
seeing a lot of families, and we were able to expand our clinic to double the size
Oh,
last
that's
year.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're having a lot of fun.
So you have all this sensory stuff that you're doing. How much of your day is handwriting?
I'll be honest with you, approximately 10% perhaps.
So that's even maybe cutting it a little bit to a higher level. So you aren't doing a lot of handwriting at all.
I do see some children that are referred for handwriting difficulties. However, Cheri, we all know that beneath the handwriting, there are so many things going on with the brain. You know, if a child is not regulated, we're not able to even get them to sit at a table to practice writing.
Mm-hmm.
Many times they have visual perceptual difficulties that need to be treated underneath
Mm-hmm.
in order to progress. A lot of them have difficulty crossing midline. So
Yes.
being able to touch their right hand to their left knee. And we
A
know
lot
that
of
those are important.
a lot of that crossing midline has to do with those primitive reflexes.
Yes, absolutely. So we're really a clinic that looks at all of the reasons beneath the difficulties with handwriting. Have
Cool.
you have you seen the pyramid, the learning pyramid?
The learning pyramid. No, tell me.
So the learning pyramid was established. It's a visual diagram, and I wish I had it here with me to show you. And it's called the pyramid of learning. So we have the baseline skills that we need to have
Mhm.
established before we can actually learn and be present. So
Yeah.
children that have difficulty with body awareness, proprioceptive difficulties, those
Hmm.
issues need to be worked on prior to being able to sit and regulate and be able to use our cortical brain to think, work through problems.
I believe I fell into that just by accident when I created my pyramid, where I'm really looking at the sensory motor and memory aspects as biomechanical before you can really look at the cognitive and language aspects of handwriting. I
Absolutely.
probably fell into that just by default.
Most of the children that I see are not regulated in their own body. And
Right.
so we need to work on those skills first before we address handwriting.
Hmm. So does that mean that you're getting kids with dysgraphia or not so much?
I think I'm seeing a lot of children with dysgraphia that has not been diagnosed.
Mm. And
It's
most of them aren't diagnosed.
yes, it's in combination with other issues. Many of these children have the self-regulation issues. They might have the sensory issues, And so I'm seeing them for those reasons. However, most of those children have difficulty with writing. Most of them have difficulties with coordination tasks. And so I incorporate that into my treatment.
Wow. This has been very interesting to hear what's going on up in Canada and hear a lot of how you are uniquely bringing sensory integration to that area of the world. So tell me, do you have any questions for me?
Tell me about the new books that you have. I'm actually currently reading your Brain Body Disconnect book about handwriting.
Yeah, the one that's advertised right behind me there.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful book. You've done a great
Thank
job
you.
of bringing the information, which is not always easy to understand,
Mhm.
and putting it into simple format.
Yeah. So some of the things that I'm working on is I'm working with a math teacher, and we have been doing all kinds of content research over the last year. Very soon, hoping in the next 2 weeks, that we are actually going to start really refining our timeline again and getting it ready so that we can start writing. One of the things that we were falling into a problem with early on in our desire to co-write a book together was she didn't understand the differences in the levels of intellect with the children and how that impacted their functional day. She could see a lot of those really high gifted students and really targeting how they learned. What she didn't understand, but she did understand it, but she didn't have it able to articulate it for me to understand where she was coming from, was those kids that didn't understand the process, didn't understand the concepts. She's created this magnificent piece that is really taking a timeline of procedural math and concepts of math, intersecting them, and really has come up with quadrants of learning that are really impacting math. Her book that she wrote, that she ended up choosing to write first, is called Making Mathineers. And we are anticipating, she wants it to be published right as this new school year begins back up in August. So look for Making Mathineers by Jonily Zupancic coming out real soon. And then we are going to be writing one that's specifically geared to the kids that really have difficulty with procedural math and conceptual math, and really working on helping them with strategies to get better. One of the techniques that we are using is, what do you see? What do you notice? So I want you to imagine in your mind, since we don't really have a way of putting it up on the screen quickly, excuse me. I want you to imagine 4 letters:
Okay.
G, Y, P, T, right? When you think about those, if you are a child and I put them up in front of you and that's all you see, I say, what do you see? And I give them the chance to let their mind process and tell me what they see. Then I ask them, what do you notice? So I'm really trying to pull out of them, what are the similarities? What are the differences in the 4 letters that happen to be in front of them? And I'm actually working right now on developing the sequence of how I want to integrate those in my 2020 to 2021 school year. In my what do you see, what do you notice, I'm actually laying out ahead of time what I want to do with that. And it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out this coming year. So I'm going to be doing an action research project while I'm writing the book on what do you see, what do you notice, and how the impact of the letters works. I also think I'm going to sneak in numbers in there once in a while.
So what drew you to this particular area of occupational therapy?
Thank you. I needed that after that got caught in my throat.
Hmm.
What drew me to this? I've been working as an occupational therapist for 25 years. I'm about 2009. I got a job as a school-based therapist. Walked in blind, had no idea what I was doing as an occupational therapist in the school system. Granted, I knew occupational therapy. I did not know how. What I did as an adult, because I've always worked in neuro rehab. What do those things that I did as an adult, how do they translate to the kids? What is the connection? And then what is that connection to handwriting? So I kind of figured that out. But then I kept getting this question: how can my child read and not be able to write? And I went, and I couldn't answer the question. So for me to be able to answer that question, I had to do my own research to be able to figure out what it was. It's a totally different neurological path, and developmentally, the reading and the writing are so separate, and we think because they happen so much simultaneously that they are integrated a lot more than they truly are. Also came to find that memory is a big barrier to writing, and really looking at strategies to help kids build their memory skills, that they can use that automatic memory. Now, another thing is we've really had a problem with utilizing the words working memory. Working memory is really an auditory process. It is not a visual process. Processing speed is the process that's visual. So really also understanding and delineating how the assessments are done and how they are laid out was very helpful at helping me understand what the different ways were to interpret information. So been doing a lot of information processing education for myself.
Okay.
So taking that, I wrote the book. Then I wrote the course, Handwriting Brain-Body Disconnect. I'm working on the dysgraphia. The other thing that's happening is I'm working on that whole coaching model and how to coach OTs to think beyond the classroom or that one-on-one treatment. Really being able to find out where their heart's desire is. Is it that they're going in because they have a job as a school-based therapist and they're going in every day? Or is their heart's desire beyond that particular piece of occupational therapy? It might still be in the school, but is it the one-on-one? Or is it development of an RTI program in the States that is response to intervention? And that's where that whole consultative level is very powerful. So you talking about consultative level, that's more of an RTI model? Or is it something like I'm doing where I'm going out and I'm now teaching other occupational therapists pieces of that puzzle? So really looking at that. So that particular program that I'm creating there is very close to being announced to the world.
Wow, that's amazing, Cheri. That's great.
That is called royalty rights, WRITES, not like royalty, like you're getting money off of a book, but royalty as in being that noble and courageous person that is going beyond the norm. So royalty being like more like the queen, the king.
Now, in your book, you talked a little bit about convergence insufficiency,
Mm-hmm.
divergence issues, and this is something that I see a lot of in the clinic. I notice in my general assessment that many children have difficulty with their vision.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I ask the parents if they've been to an optometrist, excuse me, the result is often that their vision is fine. And so I always tell people there's a difference between vision and sight. sight is that I can see you. Vision is how our eyes work together. And so I often refer my children to a developmental optometrist to make sure that they don't have those difficulties.
Yes.
And surprisingly enough, several of them have come back to OT with a new set of glasses because they didn't realize that, you know, they
Yes.
had that difficulty.
Yeah. Where did I see that? I just read an article, and I can't even remember where I saw it. Just read an article that nearsightedness is escalating in the United States, and I believe Canada would be the same way because of this little device. Because what kids are doing is they're looking, so the convergence is going right here, and they're going to their device. It might be going to a computer or an iPad, so it's maybe a little farther away. It's hard to without moving my webcam to go that distance. But one of the things that they're having a real difficult time with is that transition from the phone to paper to the board and back, and like really having their eyes understand the divergence to the convergence, and really going back and forth. And it's getting worse with the advent of the closer and smaller devices.
Yes. I can also imagine that we're going to see an increase in the physical issues related to using a screen, you know,
Mm-hmm.
being in the flex position, their head
Yes.
down. And so,
Yes. As much as I'm trying to sit really tall as we're talking, all I want to do is I want to collapse in. So yeah, it's hard, and the kids do not realize the impact of what they are doing when they're laying over. They know it's comfortable.
what we're noticing is that many of these children have very weak postural systems.
Yeah.
Their core muscles are very weak. And
Yes.
so they may be slumped over the desk, or they're not able to sit up properly. They may fall off the desk
Mm-hmm.
or off the chair that they're sitting on. So it's more than just working on, giving adaptations. It's more than just giving a slanted binder to have it in front of them. It's to actually work on that whole connection between the core and the brain.
Amen. Amen. Yes. Yeah. And it's going to take a lot more education and a lot more research, maybe published research on that impact, because it's really we're really starting to notice it be an issue with our kids. It's getting worse all the time. So
Many children are not really taking the time to color anymore, or play outside and use their hands and their bodies to figure things out. And so they're lacking those foundational skills for learning.
they also have, and I don't want to say this negatively, but they also have parents who aren't wanting to go outside. I'm one of them. I hate to go outside. So going outside and digging in dirt and pulling weeds and doing that kind of stuff, parents are also instilling that on their kids too, if that is the lifestyle, that they don't do that kind of activity themselves. So it's this compounding thing where our lifestyle is just changing.
It is. I'm the opposite. I love to get in there and get dirty hands and garden and
Well,
do
come on down to PA, and you can go now outside my house and you can pull all the weeds you want. So,
but you're right, Cheri. There's so many mums that in therapy, if we're working on different sensory activities,
oh, they're repulsed. They're repulsed.
they're concerned about their child getting dirty or making a big mess. I say
Mhm.
make the mess. That's how children learn.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of what happens with picky eater kids is their parents are so sensory averse, they're afraid to let them get food on the outside of their mouth.
Yes. Now,
Yeah.
one thing I was wondering about, are you also noticing that you're seeing a lot of children who haven't crawled a lot as a baby?
Yes. They're getting stuck in a car seat and they're not getting a chance to crawl.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've also noticed myself in that their crawling pattern is not reciprocal. They may bum scoot, or they may drag one leg,
Mm-hmm.
or they may just not crawl at all. They might just walk early. And
And you studying the primitive reflexes, are you noticing that there's a primitive reflex that's not working well, that is not allowing that reciprocation to happen?
yes, they often have a retained ATNR reflex, that asymmetric tonic neck reflex, where they can't. These children often can't cross midline, or they're rotating the paper so that they can, look at it. They can't dissociate their head from their body.
Right.
And this also is accompanied by many sensory difficulties.
Yeah.
You think about the position of crawling. We're up on our we're on our hands and our knees. We're developing that good sense of proprioception. We're getting pressure through our joints. And that's giving us information about the world and stability in our core.
And it's also strengthening those head neck extensor muscles, because it's pulling, they have to look up to be able to see where they're going.
Yeah.
Another one of the reflexes I think about when I'm thinking about that whole reciprocation is the spinal galant and the spinal parese. I don't know if you've heard the spinal parese. That one seems to be new to a lot of therapists, but it's touching the lower back or the thoracic region. Kids don't like anyone touching their back. Who are getting to the point where they like having that car seat there, that constant, but any piece that's more of a pinpoint type touch, doesn't happen because they haven't been moving.
Yes, I totally agree. In fact, these are the children with the retained spinal galant that often don't like tags on their jeans,
Yeah.
or they're wiggling constantly in their chair in order to get that movement or that pressure on their back. They often
They want to be standing up all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, they want to be the ones that are standing up. So they get mistaken as ADHD, and a lot of times it's really a retained reflex.
Yes, absolutely. We've also noticed that we have a lot of older children that continue to wet the bed at night.
Yes.
And so by treating, in physio and occupational therapy, we're able to work through some of those issues. I once had a athlete who came to me, and he was a competitive athlete, and he was 15 or 16 years old. And he came to me because he was having issues with bedwetting. And within a month's time of doing exercises and really working on that whole sensory piece, we were able to, extinguish that.
Yeah.
So that's really rewarding.
Yeah. Let me get something. I've been reading this book. Now, here I am sharing a book with you, The Rhythmic Movement Method by Harald Blomberg.
Yes, that's a fabulous book.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm doing a lot of study in that book and his website right now. So
have you also noticed that using rhythm helps to organize the brain for these children?
So you're doing a lot of music therapy?
I'm using a lot of metronome activities where the child will have to, either clap or to a metronome, or we will do movement and ball activities to a metronome beat in order to help organize the brain.
Yeah. Interactive metronome is an amazing tool.
That's not one that I'm familiar with, but I'm just simply thinking of an old metronome.
They've taken the idea of rhythmic movement, and they've actually created a computer program which uses the whole idea of the rhythmic beat. And they've actually done research on the diagnosis of the children and found that certain diagnoses will anticipate the beat, certain ones will consistently lag the beat, which is quite interesting.
Yes.
So there's another one for you in your continual learning to consider. So, all right, before we end today, I like to ask two questions. You're not from the United States, but the tagline of the American Occupational Therapy Association is living life to the fullest. Does Canada or Ontario, and I know each province in Canada is a little different, so does Ontario have a tagline that they like to use?
I'm not sure if Ontario does. However, I'm part of the Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists, and their tagline is Skills for the job of living.
Skills for the job of living. So what does that mean to you?
I really believe that as an OT, I can help people develop those very basic parts of the brain that we need to have matured in order to work on the skills for the job of living.
Okay.
In order to be able to sit and pay attention, in order to be able to write, in order to be able to even zip up their coat. Those are the skills that children need in order to go about their daily life.
Mm-hmm. All right. And my last question that I've been asking everybody along the way is, do you have a favorite podcast that you recommend?
Yes, I do. I listen to a podcast that is broadcasted from a physiotherapist in either Australia or New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
Now I'm trying to remember what the actual title of it is, but she's had some amazing guests on there. Do you know which one I'm speaking about?
No, I'm not. You have said here, Wire on Development, but I've never, is that the name of the podcast?
Yes, it is. That's right. Well, thank you for reminding me. Wired on Development.
I've never heard of that one.
It's a wonderful podcast, and the physiotherapist who runs that podcast does a lot of talking about the neurodevelopmental components of childhood and how we can help these children. What drew me to this podcast is that I follow a physical therapist from Canada, from Ontario, Canada, Shelley Manel, and
Okay.
I've heard her speak at a conference in the United States. It's funny, you go to the States in order to hear a speaker from Canada.
It happens, you know.
And she spoke on this podcast and really got me interested in listening to this entire series that she's put together.
Interesting. How about recommendations for books?
Wow, there's so many books. Where do I even start? What kind of book? What sort of topic were you thinking about, Cheri?
Whatever, you know, it could be from business to OT to just a very good parent recommendation. When I think about this question, it's so open that whatever is really impacting you and your heart is what we need to recommend. There's so many books. It's an amazing world, and it's an amazing adventure.
It really is. I'm a big fan of Norman Deutsch.
Norman Deutsch. Okay.
Deutsch.
What does he, what's his genre?
He is a physician, I believe. That's his background. And he speaks about how the brain can change itself. How we can make differences in our, we can do activities and we can actually change our brain, which is neuroplasticity.
Yes, it is. That's kind of like Daniel Amen and Change Your Brain, Change Your Life.
Yes, I've heard of that as well. Another author who I really have a lot of respect for is Bruce Perry.
Bruce Perry? And what does Bruce Perry do?
Dr. Bruce Perry is a physician in the United States who works with children who have experienced developmental trauma.
Developmental trauma. Oh, trauma is a big problem, and it's getting worse and worse all the time. Is that some of the other things that you do at your clinic, is work with trauma?
Yes, I have a special interest in helping children with developmental trauma. And so I'm seeing a lot of children who are being referred. These children are not able to regulate themselves at home or at school or even within foster care because of the trauma that they've experienced from a very young life.
Do you see a correlation between the primitive reflexes and trauma?
I absolutely do. I see
Interesting.
Children are very in a state of hyperarousal. They'll often be very fearful and they're not able to relax in their own body. And so because of that, they're not able to speak about their difficulties. So I work very closely with a team of psychotherapists here in Ottawa, and we work together to, help these children express themselves because we know that that's healing. And so I help them to feel comfortable in their own bodies using sensory integration techniques, traditional OT techniques or activities and exercises. And then the child is able to go back to therapy or even express to me in sessions how they're feeling.
So you have created a niche where you're able to talk with, having that unique niche with the trauma, with the doctors, and that relationship, and building your practice around that. Also pulling in the sensory and the primitive reflexes. Very interesting. Very interesting.
All of the occupational therapists on our team seem to have a special area of interest. We all have training in sensory integration.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us do more handwriting therapy than others. It just so happens that I love to work with kids who have experienced trauma. I find it very rewarding.
So tell us a little bit where to find you. Can you be found on the internet, or where can we find you?
Our website is www.ontheball.ca.
On the ball. That sounds fun.
So the therapy ball is probably one of the most used items in our clinic.
Well, it should be if you're on the ball all the time. Supine, prone, and sitting. Yeah, it's so much fun, isn't it?
It really is.
So your website is on the ball, and .ca for Canada rather than a .com for the United States.
Yes.
So .ca. Anywhere else that they can find you?
I also have a page on Facebook. Our clinic has a page on Facebook. It's On the Ball. We also have a page entitled On the Ball OT Ideas. And I put this page together even before the clinic was born. And it's a page to educate the public and families and professionals about what we do. Because I find that occupational therapy is not well known. People don't really know what we do.
No, so they don't.
I've put on a lot of activities to help parents and families encourage their children to work on skills that they'll need for independence.
Wow, cool. So make sure that you share that link with me so that when I post this, that we can share that with the audience that might be seeing this.
Absolutely.
It was great to have you here. Is there anything else before we go?
I don't think so. We've talked about a lot of different things. I feel as though we could probably talk for hours about our profession.
Yeah, we probably could. We probably could. This is Cheri Dotterer, your dysgraphia consultant. Here's another interview for you, and enjoy your day.
Thanks so much, Cheri.
Thank you. It was great to have you here.